Black waitress is mocked for her scars, until a veteran is shocked to recognize the unit tattoo. It came in an unmarked envelope, no return address, no postage, just a single word written across the front in shaky pen: Sparrow. Mariah found it wedged into the screen door of her trailer just after dawn. The sky was bruised with morning gray, and the grass around the lot still shimmered with dew. Inside the envelope were two things: a folded list of 6 names, each with a birth date and last known location. A small photograph of a burned military patch, the same unit as hers. She stared at the list. Her heart beat faster with every name. One was marked deceased, Compound Fire 2020. Another, missing, last seen in Albuquerque 2022. But 3 more had locations beside them. One, only 20 miles away. Jackson read over her shoulder, thoughtful. They were part of the program too, confused. "Why would someone send this to me?" she whispered, determined. "Because someone wants the truth to survive. Maybe they couldn't speak, but they want you to." Mariah looked out toward the hills beyond the trailer park. The fog rolled slowly over the treetops. Somber. "I'm not the only one." Firm. "No," Jackson said. "You never were. You were just the first one who refused to disappear." That afternoon, the diner was quieter than usual. The news had reached the town, not from Mariah directly, but from Willa Raymond, a young reporter from the capital who showed up at the counter unannounced. She wore a weathered jacket, muddy boots, and carried nothing but a beat-up leather satchel and a recorder. Direct. "You Mariah Avery?" she asked. Mariah looked her over cautiously, suspicious. "Who's asking?" Earnest. "I'm the person who believed your story when no one else would. And I think it's bigger than either of us imagined." Jackson stepped out of the kitchen with narrowed eyes. Annoyed. "You followed the story here?" Shaken. "I ran from it," Willa said. "They burned down my apartment last week. My notes, my backup drives, all gone. I barely made it out. The only thing I saved was this." She pulled out a small flash drive from her necklace chain. "Grave. I traced funding from Norline Dynamics to a military subcontractor with a project titled Haven 13. Mariah wasn't just a one-off. There were dozens, and most of them have vanished." Mariah felt the blood drain from her face, shocked. "They're still doing it?" she asked. Willa nodded grimly. "Grim. And they're cleaning house." At 3:21 p.m., the power cut out. Not just the diner, the entire block. Mariah and Jackson exchanged a look. Seconds later, the fire alarm in the kitchen began to wail, but there was no smoke. False signal. Distraction. Jackson grabbed Willa by the arm and pushed her toward the back. Urgent. "Out the side now." Mariah moved to follow, but she paused just long enough to glance toward the front window. A black
He wasn't
SUV,
from anywhere nearby.
windows tinted. Jackson
Engine
slammed the
idling,
back
no
door open
plates.
and shouted. She froze.
"Move!"
A shadow stepped out. They escaped through the alley
Tall.
just as the front window shattered inward, another brick. This one wrapped in something darker. A dead phone. Wires exposed. Battery cracked. Like a message. Next time, it won't be a warning. They regrouped in Jackson's truck, speeding away from the diner. Mariah gripped the seatbelt, breathing fast, scars on her arms twitching like echoes of memory. "This is war now," she said. Jackson didn't disagree. "And they just crossed the line." By nightfall, the town wasn't silent anymore. The attack had crossed a line with more than just Mariah. A local teenage boy had been inside the diner when it happened. He was hit with glass, nothing fatal, but enough to scare his parents. The same parents who had once whispered doubts about that waitress with the scars were now asking questions out loud. The sheriff held a press conference, stumbling over his words. "We are, investigating the incident, working with federal channels, trying to determine if this is connected to certain online claims made recently." But the town didn't buy it, because now it wasn't just about Mariah. It was about safety, about truth, about being manipulated, and the town was starting to wake up. Inside the church hall that evening, Jackson stood before a small crowd of locals who had gathered without being asked. Mariah stood beside him, shoulders squared. Willa projected a slideshow from her laptop onto a sheet hung over the pulpit. Images flicked by. Mariah's sealed medical file, internal memos, burned-out buildings tied to other subjects. The SUV caught briefly on a security camera. The list of names from the envelope. "This is not just a military cover-up," Willa said. It's corporate experimentation, human trials without consent, and Mariah is living proof that someone survived it. A woman in the back spoke. "What do they want now?" Gravely. "To silence her," Jackson answered. "To make sure none of you believe she ever existed, just like they did the first time." An older man raised his hand, thoughtful. "I used to think she was lying," he admitted. "But now," firmly, "I think she's the bravest damn person in this town." Others nodded. It was small, but it was a beginning. Outside, in the shadows of a nearby shed, a red laser from a scope blinked once, then vanished. The address led them to a mechanic's yard just outside of Claiborne, 20 miles and a world away from the town Mariah once tried to disappear in. Jackson pulled the truck behind a row of broken-down trailers. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the rusted frames. Birds scattered from the trees overhead. Mariah clutched the list from the envelope. The name scrawled in faded pen, Jeremiah Cross, status, unknown. She stepped out of the truck. An old dog barked somewhere behind the scrap piles. A wind chime rattled against an aluminum door. Jackson stayed close. The man who answered the door was younger than expected. Late 30s, maybe 40, but his eyes were older, haunted. He stared at Mariah like he'd seen a ghost. Surprised. "You're her," he said. "The sniper! Sparrow!" Mariah nodded. Questioning, "You're Cross!" He stepped aside without a word. Inside, the trailer smelled like gun oil and engine grease. The windows were blacked out with trash bags. Cross walked stiffly, a limp in his right leg. Gruff. "They tried to finish me last winter," he said, gesturing to the faded scar across his jaw. "Didn't do a good job." Mariah sat at his kitchen table. Serious. "Why didn't you speak out?" Bitter. "I did. To my own unit. They thought I was crazy. Then my wife left. Sad. Said she didn't marry a science experiment." Jackson leaned forward. Urgent. "We're not alone anymore. We've found files, records, names. You saw the post?" Cross nodded. Grim. "Saw the brick too. Told me they're getting desperate." Mariah handed him the envelope. Determined. "We need the others." Resigned. "They won't come," he said. "They're scared, or gone." Determined. "But I'll stand with you, one more time." He opened a drawer, pulled out a black duffel. Inside, ammo, burner phones, a drive marked Haven footage. Mariah's heart caught. Surprised. "You kept a copy?" Cross gave her a long look. Firm. "I don't throw away the truth." The next day, the diner never reopened. Jackson slammed the back door. Not because Mariah gave up. Because someone got to Willa. They escaped. Her satchel was found on the edge of Route 12. Another blood on the strap. This one wrapped in something darker. No sign of phone. Mariah dropped to her knees when she saw the satchel, like a message. She believed next time she won't be a warning. Heartbroken. They regrouped in Jackson's truck. Jackson's voice broke from the diner, voice breaking. Mariah "They'll come for us next," breathing fast. But Mariah was done running, arms twitching like echoes of memory. "No, this is war now. We go to them," she said. Jackson didn't disagree. They uploaded everything from Cross's hard drive. The line. Videos of procedures, by nightfall, surgical footage, the town wasn't audio recordings of screams the attack had crossed the line, notes showing test intervals. A local teenage boy had been inside the diner. One clip showed Mariah on a table with glass, unconscious, nothing fatal, while a voice off screen said, his parents, clinical. The same parents who had once whispered regenerating faster than anticipated. Push the dosage. We're now asking another voice. Out loud. What if she wakes up? The sheriff held a press conference, stumbling over his words. "We already terminated the identity. Investigating the incident viral in hours." But so did the target on Mariah's back, trying to determine if this is connected to certain online claims made recently. Then the sirens. But the town didn't buy it. County emergency because now it wasn't triggered by something off the books. It was about safety, a containment about breach, truth. They said about being manipulated, shelter in place, and the people gathered in the church basement. Mariah and Jackson stood by the door. Weapons ready, stood before a small crowd of locals who had gathered without being asked. Windows. Mariah stood Cross manned the generator outside. Armed Willa with a projected a slideshow from her laptop onto a sheet. At 2:37 a.m., images appeared in the fog. Mariah's sealed medical file, tactical internal memos, no local tags, burned out buildings. Jackson took one look and subjects. Norline. The SUV they didn't briefly on a security camera. They opened fire. The list of names tore into the side of the church hall. Windows this is not just a military screams echoing off stone walls. It's corporate Mariah dove across the aisle, covering trials without consent. Jackson returned fire and Mariah through a broken living proof that someone kicked in the rear exit and opened fire with a shotgun. A man in black went down, gravely, but another to silence with a drone-like calm. Jackson answered, "To make sure none of you believe she ever existed," he said into a calm, just like they did the first time. Mariah grabbed the rifle. An older man raised his hand, the same model from Kandahar. I used to think she was lying. She hadn't used it since. Now she didn't hesitate. Firmly, she took 2 shots. I think she's the bravest damn person in this town. The townsfolk who once mocked her now stood shoulder to shoulder. But it was a beginning. An old man with a hunting rifle in the shadows, a mother with a baseball bat, a red laser from a clerk who refused to hide. Then they weren't soldiers, but they were done being silent. The final intruder breached the front door. He moved fast, too fast. Jackson moved faster, tackled him into the pews, knocking over candles, stained glass crashing behind them. "Tell them," Jackson growled. "Tell them we're still here." The man spit blood. "You're dead already." "No," Mariah said, stepping forward. "I just remembered who I am." She raised the rifle and ended it. When the smoke cleared, the town had changed. They had stood their ground. They had chosen the scarred woman over the invisible enemy. And Mariah Avery, once mocked, once buried, stood among them, not as a waitress, but as a veteran, a survivor, a leader. The morning after the firefight, the air felt different, calmer, but heavier too, like the sky knew what had been lost and what still remained buried beneath the silence. Mariah stood outside the church, arms crossed over her chest, watching the horizon. The town was quiet, save for the sounds of rebuilding, boards being nailed to windows, people sweeping up broken glass, whispers being replaced with purpose. Her rifle hung from her shoulder. She hadn't returned it to storage. She wasn't that kind of woman anymore. Jackson sat in the pews, wrapping a torn bandage around his ribs. His breathing was shallow but steady. Mariah entered quietly. "3 gone," he said. "1 injured. Could have been worse." "They weren't trying to arrest me," she replied. "They came to erase the town." Jackson nodded. "And failed." Mariah hesitated, then pulled something from her jacket. A flash drive. Cross found this on the body of the team leader, hidden in a fake tooth, encrypted. Jackson took it with furrowed brows. "Could be our last breadcrumb." They plugged it into Willa's salvaged laptop. The files were coded, the interface unfamiliar. But one document stood out. Project Haven Final Directive. Eyes only. Subject, S-01. Codename Sparrow. Status, alive. Unresolved asset. Termination authorized. Special note. Emotional attachment identified. Agent Thallon must be monitored. Mariah leaned forward, surprised. "Thallon," she said aloud. Jackson froze. His eyes darkened. "That was my call sign," he muttered. Mariah stepped back like she'd been struck. "What?" Jackson stood up, trembling slightly, not from age, but from memory. "It was during my final tour. I was assigned recovery operations, off-the-books units. I didn't know who you were back then. I was just told a soldier went AWOL after an experimental program failed." He stared at the screen, jaw clenched. "They sent me to bring you in. I never found you." "But you recognized the tattoo," she whispered, "the moment you saw it at the counter." Jackson nodded slowly. "And I knew it was you, and that everything I'd been told was a lie." Outside, a commotion broke the tension. A truck pulled into the center of town, mud-covered, windshield cracked, antenna bent. Willa, alive. Blood crusted on her temple, one eye blackened, but standing. Mariah rushed out, caught her before she collapsed. Jackson helped carry her inside the church where the townspeople gathered around, stunned. "Where the hell have you been?" Mariah asked, voice trembling. They didn't kill me," Willa whispered. "They wanted to trade me." "For what?" Jackson asked. Willa pulled a blood-stained envelope from her coat. "For this." Inside was a single photo, Mariah. Not from war, not from the diner, from before all of it. Age 15, hospital gown, needles in her arms, Groff. "She wasn't selected randomly," Willa said. "She was groomed." They stared at her. Surprised. Mariah's lips parted. "What are you talking about?" Willa pulled another folder from her bag. It had Norline Dynamics branding and a project number, NXH12. Somber. The project didn't start in Kandahar, she said. It started in Maryland, a pediatric cancer wing. You weren't a soldier when they tagged you, Mariah. You were a patient. Denying. Mariah shook her head slowly. No, that's not true. Softly. They gave you something, Willa said softly. An experimental recovery agent. It worked. You healed. You forgot. Because they made sure of it. Mariah backed up, muttering. I didn't forget, she muttered, horrified. Jackson stepped forward, face pale. They pre-programmed your service, explaining. You were the first success, Willa said. They watched you grow up. They waited until you enlisted, then placed you where they could study what the therapy did under real trauma. Mariah dropped the photo. Her hands were shaking. I thought I chose the military, she whispered. I thought I served by will, gravely. They chose long before you did, Willa replied. They made you a soldier. They just let you believe it was your idea. Hours later, the sun set on the town again, but it wasn't the same sun as before. Inside the trailer, Mariah stared into a cracked mirror. Her reflection no longer looked like a waitress, or even a soldier. It looked like someone born inside a lie. Jackson sat nearby, rubbing his cane handle like a rosary. They used both of us, she said finally. I was the product. You were the cleanup crew. Thoughtful. Jackson didn't argue. I think they underestimated one thing. Curious. What? He met her eyes, firmly. Free will. That night, someone left a package at the church steps. Inside, a phone. Activated. One video played. A man in a dark room, half lit. Former scientist. He didn't name himself. Urgent. If you're seeing this, then I'm dead, and she's alive. Warning. They'll never stop hunting her, because she didn't just survive Haven, she exceeded it. She doesn't age like the others. She doesn't break like they did. She was supposed to die in the blast, but she didn't, gravely. Because deep down, she wasn't just a test. She was the blueprint. The video ended. Mariah sat in silence, then stood, determined. We find the others, she said. The ones left, the ones hiding. Jackson nodded, resolute. We build something they can't erase. Flashback. Location, Baltimore, Maryland, 17 years ago. The air inside the children's wing smelled like antiseptic and artificial strawberries. Room 214. Patient, Mariah Avery. Age, 15. Diagnosis, soft tissue sarcoma. Stage terminal. She had stopped counting the needles, stopped asking for visitors, stopped crying when the pain got too loud. Thoughtful. What she hadn't stopped doing was watching, observational. Even then, Mariah watched everything. Doctors who whispered near her door, the woman in the gray suit who visited after hours, the file-marked trial candidate that her mother never got to see, and the man who came every Tuesday wearing a lab coat but no ID badge. He didn't speak to her, just watched her through the glass. Ominous. One day, the IV changed. A clear, cool drip, unlike anything before. No label. Within 24 hours, the tumors began shrinking. Within a week, her scans were blank. Surprised, everyone called it a miracle. Determined, Mariah didn't. Sad because that man in the lab coat, he never came back. Thoughtful, but her dreams changed after that. Disturbed, she started remembering things that never happened. Combat, explosions, names she didn't know, scars she didn't have. Ominous. Yet. 2. The tattoo. Location. Fort Harlan. 6 years later. She was 21 when they assigned her to 117th Recon. Call sign, Sparrow. Casual. The recruiter said it was a clean record placement. Thoughtful. But Mariah noticed little details no one else seemed to care about. Like how her physical scores were always mysteriously flagged as optimal without explanation, or how her medical reports were shorter than everyone else's. Ominous, and then the tattoo. Casual, they told her it was tradition. Every soldier in their unit got it. A stylized sparrow with talons out, perched over a Roman numeral. XV IV. But the ink didn't scab, didn't itch, didn't even need bandages. Surprised, because when she looked close, she realized, shocked, it wasn't a tattoo at all. Awe. It was grown into her skin. 3. The mission. Location, Northern Kandahar Province. 5 years ago. Operation name, Broken Falcon. Casual. Recon sweep, supposed to be routine. Mariah led point, flanked by 4 others. Ominous. But nothing about that day was routine. The coordinates were wrong, the trail too quiet, the sand too clean. The explosion came from underneath. 1 second she was signaling the advance, the next she was flying backward, her ribs cracking against stone. Everything blurred, sound vanished, and then came the fire. Disturbed. When she woke up, 3 were dead. 1 was missing. She crawled out of the crater, legs broken, blood in her eyes, determined. But she didn't die, defiant, not even close. Eerie. The bones began stitching themselves back together as if remembering their shape.
Stitches could ever manage.
The skin sealed faster. And beneath it all, something in her welcomed the pain. She walked for 2 miles on a fractured ankle. The drone above didn't notice, but someone else did. 4. The facility location, undisclosed, underground medical wing 4 years ago. They told her she'd been transferred for recovery. Mariah believed them. Until she woke up strapped to a table with no name tag, no rank, and no visitors. She remembered the cold, the soft hum of machines, the red light in the corner that blinked only when she screamed. They gave her injections, stim tests, EMG probes along her spine. She heard words whispered beyond the glass. Phase 2. Trauma reinforcement successful. S01 adapting faster than predicted. And always, coldly, remove memory of subject's pre-military life. She asks too many questions. For weeks, she drifted between sedation and simulation. Until one day, she stopped cooperating. She snapped a wrist restraint, headbutted the lead doctor, disappeared into the bowels of the compound. She made it as far as the lower stairwell before they caught her. But by then, she had heard enough. She's remembering too much. Initiate the KIA protocol. 5. The betrayal location. U.S.-based classified hangar, 3.5 years ago. Jackson stood over a file. Her photo, her patch. AWOL, mentally unstable, maybe armed, subject must be contained. He wasn't told what contained meant, but he wasn't stupid. He tracked her to an Afghan village where she was hiding, working as a farmhand, barely speaking. She looked broken, but she wasn't. She was watching him. She knew who sent him before he opened his mouth. Flatly, "You're here to kill me," she said. Jackson hesitated, then said the first honest thing he'd said in years, sincerely. "No, I'm here to figure out why they want you dead so badly." She fled that night, disappeared into the back channels, and Jackson, he never filed the report. 6. The return location, small-town diner, present day. Mariah blinked in the mirror, her hands pressed against the bathroom sink. Now she remembered it all. The gown, the ink that wasn't ink, the experiments, the fake tattoo, the file that said "terminate if exposed," and the memory they couldn't wipe, the moment she stopped being afraid. Outside the diner, the rebuilt street hummed with quiet life. But inside Mariah's chest, something had lit a fire that no one, not DARPA, not Norline, not any shadow lab, could extinguish. She wasn't a waitress. She wasn't a soldier. She was proof that the truth could survive experiments, could survive lies, could survive being buried alive. The survivor. They found him in the hills beyond the old mine shaft, living off canned food and fear. His name was Silas Vane, the last confirmed subject from the Haven trials, marked as terminated 4 years ago. But he wasn't dead. He was hiding. Mariah, Jackson, and Cross stood at the edge of his makeshift camp, half expecting a trap. The man who stepped into the clearing looked nothing like a soldier. His face was sunken, eyes twitchy, voice barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't have come," he muttered. "They'll see you. They see everything." Mariah stepped forward. "We know what they did to you, Silas. We know what they did to all of us." "You don't," he snapped. "You still think you're a person. You're not. None of us are. We're just patents with bones." He pointed to the scar behind his ear, a barcode etched into flesh. ID 453, not a name, just an asset, a number on a shelf. Mariah's voice softened. "But you're still breathing. You still chose to live. That means something." Silas shook his head violently. "I didn't choose. I was too scared to die." He turned to Jackson. They offered me a deal, come back quietly, be studied again. I refused. Cross stepped forward, then help us stop them. Silas's eyes twitched again. Resigned. You can't stop what they've become, he said. They're not a project now, they're a system. The countdown begins. The next attack wasn't loud, it was silent. A single email sent from an encrypted account arrived in Willa's inbox. Satellite lock confirmed. Operation, Foglight in 36 hours. Grid shutdown and erasure approved. Claiborne will be erased as collateral. S.01 must not survive. Mariah read the words twice. Her knees didn't buckle this time. She looked at Jackson, her voice ice cold. They're going to wipe the town, everyone in it. Willa confirmed it. They'll cut the power, jam all signals, and drop a black ops unit into the heart of town. Label it a domestic threat. Say it never happened. Mariah paced the floor of the church hall, her mind racing. They're betting I'll run. Cross loaded shells into a shotgun. Are we? Mariah looked out the stained glass window. No, we make them show up. And we let the whole damn country watch. The town rallied behind her again. This time not with doubt, but with purpose. They set up barricades along Main Street, reinforced the school basement as shelter, gathered batteries, candles, food, old CB radios, camcorders, and enough backup drives to archive a war. Willa set up a stream, masked IP, bouncing through servers. They filmed Mariah standing in front of the diner, scars on full display. She didn't hide them, didn't flinch. She spoke slowly, clearly, every word deliberate. My name is Mariah Avery. I was created without my consent, tested, buried, labeled dead, defiant. But I lived determined. I am not a threat. I am a reminder. Serious, that your silence is their weapon. Urgent, and tonight they're coming. Not just for me, but for the truth. Ominous, if this stream goes black, ask yourself why. Challenging. Ask yourself what they didn't want you to see. The video went live. Within an hour, 50,000 were watching. By midnight, over 300,000. 4. The blackout. 1:12 a.m. The power went out. Just like before, except this time they were ready. Jackson ignited the emergency generator. Cross scanned rooftops. Willa kept the stream alive from a mobile truck parked on higher ground. Then came the signal. 3 red flares. One over the church, one over the school, one over the diner. Target designations. Mariah was the bullseye. They didn't knock. They never did. 5. The last stand. The first unit moved through the alley. Silenced weapons. Thermal goggles. They didn't expect resistance. They got Mariah. She dropped from the roof with a steel baton, took out 2 in 3 seconds, and vanished into smoke. Jackson led townsfolk through the school basement, evacuating children first. Cross handled rooftop defense. Willa streamed the chaos, blurry, raw, unfiltered. But every frame mattered, because people were watching now. People who mattered. A second wave hit the diner. Flashbangs. Gas. A drone overhead. Mariah moved through it like muscle memory, dancing between shadows, every step guided by instinct and rage. She cornered the lead operative behind the counter. He aimed a rifle at her chest. Coldly, "You're not supposed to exist," he said. Mariah didn't blink. Defiant, "Neither are your lies." She pulled the trigger, and Claiborne roared. 6. The broadcast doesn't die. They tried to jam the feed. Willa rerouted through a second uplink. They sent a cyber team. She blocked them manually, breath heaving, sweat pouring. One final surge cut everything, except the backup drive, except the analog camera cross-wired to a solar cell. The stream kept running, tethered now to a battery-powered ham radio. Old school, unstoppable. 7. One final voice. As dawn broke, Claiborne was still standing. The town square was scorched, the diner blown open. But no one ran. The attackers retreated, and Mariah, bloodied but alive, stepped into the center of the street. She looked straight at the camera. No armor, no rifle, just her scars, and she spoke again. They failed, firmly, not because I was stronger, powerful, but because I remembered who I was. Emphatic. I'm not just a subject. Resolute, I'm a woman, strong, A soldier, triumphant, a survivor, defiant. And I don't belong to your silence anymore. Behind her, the people of Claiborne stepped into the frame. Black, white, old, young, farmers, clerks, children, all standing in defiance proudly. "We're still here," she said, assertively. "And now, the world knows." 3 weeks later, Mariah Avery stood beneath the white dome of Capitol Hill, no longer hidden behind a counter, no longer hunted, no longer silent. She wore a dark suit jacket with the sleeves rolled high, her scars exposed, unashamed. Across from her sat a full Senate subcommittee on Armed Forces Oversight. Cameras lined the walls, millions watched live, and no one looked away. The chairperson adjusted her mic, formal. "Ms. Avery," calmly, "you may proceed." Mariah looked straight ahead, not at the politicians, but through them, toward the system that once erased her. Calmly, "I was recruited without consent at the age of 5, somber. I was subjected to genetic therapy under a false diagnosis. Controlled. I was placed into the military pipeline with forged records and assigned to a unit designed to monitor, not protect me." Firmly, "I survived the ambush in Kandahar because of what they did to me, strong. I survived the erasure because I refused to forget who I was, determined. I stand here today not because I want revenge, but because I want no one else to ever live the life I did, bitter, half a person, half a ghost, emphatic, and fully expendable." Her voice did not tremble. In the gallery, Cross sat with folded arms. Jackson watched from the aisle, and Willa, her face still bruised, her spirit burning, recorded every word. "The system responds." Within a week, Norline Dynamics was subpoenaed. All DARPA civilian research under Haven Phase 1-3 was suspended. A national task force on human experimentation ethics was launched. A class action lawsuit was filed by over 24 survivors, ones Mariah helped find. But more than that, something deeper shifted. People stopped mocking scars. They started asking questions. And for the first time in her life, Mariah wasn't just believed, she was respected. The return. The diner reopened exactly 40 days after the attack. Not to serve pancakes or pie, but as a memorial. The front window wasn't replaced, it was framed. Glass shards embedded in clear resin with a plaque below. Reverent. She didn't flinch. Proud. She didn't run. Strong. She stood. Inside, the walls were lined with black and white portraits. Every face known from Project Haven. Named, honored, never again faceless. Mariah still visited every Sunday, not to grieve, but to remember. Neither of them spoke much anymore. They didn't have to. Some things were too deep for words. Cross returned to the hills, but not to hide. He started a foundation for experimental veterans, named it after the unit that should have died in silence. Firmly, 17 Foundation, we are still here. Willa's report won her the highest journalism award in the country, but she didn't stop there. She wrote a book, Tattooed Proof, The Mariah Avery Files. It topped the list for months. 5. The Girl in the Mirror. One morning, Mariah stood in her trailer bathroom, staring at the same reflection that once made her hide. The scars were still there, but they didn't ache. And for the first time in her life, she asked herself, not in anger, but in clarity, who do I want to be now that I get to choose? She didn't need a full answer. She just needed the freedom to ask. She stepped outside. The air smelled like summer grass and gun oil and something new, hope. Across the way, a little girl on a bike stopped when she saw Mariah. The girl pointed. "You're the one with the story, right?" Mariah smiled. "No, sweetheart, I'm the one who finally got to finish it." Every scar is a map. Some lead home, others lead to truth, but all of them, if you let them, can lead to peace. Mariah Avery, if this story moved you, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Were you in a quiet room, a parked car, or somewhere far from where your own story began? And if you believe stories like Mariah's matter, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the world needs more truth, more heart, and fewer forgotten voices.